Suzy, thank you very, very much for joining me here today. And congratulations on the nomination being inducted into Club 3633. You are kind of an outlier, I believe, as far as people who are generally inducted into Club 3633, because most of the people who we profile, they are people who are currently in the industry, in the business, doing things right now, today. And you happen to have just recently retired last year. But
Yes.
after speaking with you, I thought that we had to talk to you and had to profile you here because, I mean, you did it. You built a business from the ground up, and you were
Yes.
able to sell it off. And I mean, you did what some might call the impossible. I mean, you actually were able to accomplish this, and retired and have a great living now. So tell me just a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got started in the industry, and just kind of the Cliff's Notes version of your journey in it.
It was probably all it wasn't the big plan in the beginning to do this. It was very early age, high school level, working in a local Goodyear store through high school, all through college. Finished school, and last year's college was probably full-time work, full-time school, just to pay for everything that needed to be paid for. And it was, but those were the days. It was a company store, the days of old, and they had all the appliances, and they had the service and the tires. I mean, they had everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the one, I was just the young one. I did, all the little trivial tasks that nobody wanted to do, but you got to be right in the middle of everything all the time. So anyway, so you saw the way a lot of interactions and how the business ran and stuff. So when I finished school, they offered me a position to stay and to run the office because I really had been doing that for a while. You learned it right there on the spot. And like I said, it was opportunities were there. Training was abundant. And the training normally came through the big corporations. And but at any rate, picked up as much training as possible. And within 5 years, we bought another store, and that's when when my time came to go to work. I had an opportunity to buy in, and I did. And of course, I was pretty young, and it was like 1984. So it was just a minute, but you just kept buying at other, had opportunities to buy more and to buy more of the business. Mm-hmm. And again, I just, there wasn't anybody that said you couldn't do it. So, and that's kind of where it just went from there.
And what was the name of that business that you ended up buying, and where's the location?
It's Marion Tire, and it was Marion, Indiana. And it was previously built as a Goodyear store. Mm-hmm. And they had sold it in the early 80s to another group, and they didn't do so well. So Goodyear approached my ownership and said, would you buy that business? And so we did. And that's when they said, you need to go. And I was ready to go. That's what I wanted to do. I loved it. I loved what I was doing. It was a smaller town. Marion is not a real big town. I think at the time it was close to 30,000. Okay. But, yes, you had, here you have this, you're a female in an automotive business in a town that you really don't know anybody. Then you just open the door and you just go to work. And, a lot of it's just the belief, and everybody believed you can do this. It'll be fine, and I wasn't really afraid because this is what I wanted to do. I had a passion, and I wanted to make it work, and I knew it could. I wasn't the real car nut, but what was important to me is, automobiles have to get everybody from point A to point B, and that has to work. They need you, and we need them to make it work. So, let's just take care of each other.
Absolutely.
And that was kind of the whole analogy forever. So, Yeah.
And you said, you said you didn't have a lot of fear, and that you were ready to
Yeah.
take on this challenge.
Hmm.
I find that fascinating, because if the shoe's on the other foot and it's me, I would be terrified. So can you explain to me, how did being a female owner of this store in the 1980s, I mean, it's rather rare even today to see
Hmm.
female-owned stores. So back in the 1980s, I can't imagine how much more rare that was. How did that
Hmm.
influence kind of how you ran your business, how you addressed challenges? Were there any specific challenges that you ran into being a female owner that were maybe difficult hurdles to get over?
Um, I think a lot of it just goes back to the people that the people before me, my mentors. They were never afraid. They were there. They could ask questions. I'm just like, okay, so we open this business and it doesn't work. What happens? And they're just like, well, it's like the little boy walking on the fence post. If he thinks somebody tells him he's going to fall, he's going to fall. So we're not going to fall. And I'm like, all right, I got this. And so, and probably, hard work. Did you have challenges? Probably, but more so, honestly, from the corporate world folks, as opposed to the dealer world, because we're just trying to make it work.
Shouldn't let those things bother you in order to be successful, I would think.
Right. And yeah, and probably growing up years, I mean, you did a lot of sports, did a lot of practice, did okay, you didn't win all the time. So, I mean, the work ethic was right there, and you aren't going to win all the time, but it's what you do with it. It's,
Hmm.
you don't internalize it. You just move on, if you can fix it, fine. Fine, but if not, it's okay, and just move on. And that, I think that got out, that type one, of, especially with my customers, that, because as time went on, after, being in the same location in the same town for 40 years, these customers turned into, they're just friends, and it was great because we were into second and third generation. So, and, they're just like, but they have to come to the point that they believe in you and what you're doing, and that you just remain honest, and they just, they trust. It's a big trust thing anyway. And
Absolutely.
I mean, wherever anybody goes, where you go to have something done, it's because you trust them,
Hmm.
and that's what we were aiming for more than anything.
That's
So,
fantastic. And in your answer there, you had mentioned people who knew what they were doing, were supporting you throughout the way. You
mhm.
mentioned to me that you had a relationship with Paul Zerker.
Yes.
Obviously, somebody who knows what he's doing. Can you kind of or kind of get into how that relationship began and how that may have influenced the trajectory of your career?
Sure. When we were formulating Marion Tire, he was one of the partners, even though minor as it was, but he was one of the partners. And back then, anyway, and the other folks were part. They knew, they had done other businesses together. They were all in the Firestone family, which is where Paul came from. And so but I hadn't at that point. You knew the name, but I didn't really had never met him.
Hmm.
But as time went on, my interactions with him became more and more as other partners went away, and I bought them and what have you. And he was we just were really close. He helped me a lot with very encouraging. He brilliant businessman. He can look at a P&L, and in three places he can say do this, this, and this, and and again, he was a partner of mine, and he would just if things weren't going just right, because you're going to have those times when things just aren't exactly the way they should be for whatever reason.
Hmm.
He was just very calmly say, here's some suggestions, this is what you do, because if you don't do, this is what's going to happen. And you're like, oh, we can't do that. So which was very helpful. But he was just so just so passionate about what he did. He cared so much about every business that he was involved with, every person in that business that he was involved with. He was a man of faith. He was, again, a man of passion, a man of honor and integrity. And it just, you just walked away just feeling like, my goodness, you just felt so much better, even though you might have been there for not the best conversation in the whole world. But he would call from time to time, and he's a busy man. I mean, this gentleman, everybody in this tire industry knows who Paul Zerker is, and very busy man. But he took the time to, call his people, and especially if it was something that, he was following up on with you, or if you would happen to had an extremely, great month, and he saw, the numbers, because, we reported in a lot of our figures and stuff. And if he saw that, he would take the time to call you and tell you how proud he was. And, and how much he believed in you, and how just all the wonderful things. But he also, would teach us to take care of our people in our stores the same way, with the respect and the dignity, and to celebrate, the winnings, and just an amazing man. Amazing.
It seems like a lot of those attributes, either you also had them inherently, or they rubbed off on you, because obviously you were able to run a very successful business, and pass some of those on, I'm sure, to some of the people who worked for you. So one last question that I have for you, when you were preparing to sell this business that you had built for 40 years, how emotionally did you prepare yourself for something like that? I mean, do you have any advice that you can give to perhaps other tire dealers who might be in a similar situation, who know, hey, this day is coming up soon, I don't know that I can let go? How do you do something like that?
Tough. It's a big decision. We don't live forever. And we know that. And we know that it's especially when things are going really, really well, it's hard to say, okay, I probably need to start looking at this. But a good thing is that in some of our board meetings, we started talking about, we need to talk about succession plans. And, and this was way before, because I would suggest that you talk about succession plans about 5 years out, because that gives you time to, for you, when I say talk about succession plans, the first person you got to talk to is yourself. And am I ready to do this? Okay. You need to, have a heart to heart and say, where am I going to call it quits? Or am I going to call it quits? Or everybody's different. That you don't have to call it quits, I suppose. But if you are, you have to make that decision, because once you say, yes, I'm going to do this, then there's a series of things that you need to, to consider. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of rule books out there tell you how to do this. Okay. There's not how to improve your bottom line, or how to, there's not. So, and so the first conversation that I had was with my board, and I'm like, this is on my mind. This is what I'm thinking. And my deal was always, I'm going out to the top of the game. I'm going to get this ready. I have great people. My people have been with me for 10, 15 years. So they know what to do. And I had backed out the last couple years off of the main line, off the front counter, off of every, I was in the back office running, I ran all the books, I ran all the projections, I kind of steered the boat from the behind, but I wanted my people to be on the front, because I wanted my customers to get used to them. And for them to maybe, if they had, to try to, to handle, the day-to-day situations. And if something wasn't just right, they could come and get suggestions. No regrets. They are great. They're doing super, and I hand the baton to the right person, and they, and they're taking it to the next level. And that's what I wanted for my people. I wanted for my customers. And I can lay my head down at night, know that we did the right thing.
See, and
Yes.
that is phenomenal. I mean, you did it and you did it right, and you're
Mm-hmm.
happy with how everything turned out. No regrets.
Mm-hmm.
That
And
is just fantastic to hear. So,
right.
Suzy, this has been a great conversation. I really, really appreciate your time here.
Yes. Thank you.
So well deserving of the recognition. Welcome to the club.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. This is fantastic.
Well, you are so welcome. And I might make one note that, the person that nominated me, because I didn't even know this until last week, I think, right when the person that nominated me was my manager from,
Mm,
and and I called him, or I guess he called me to let me know you were calling. And he says, I did this. I did this for you because you really deserve this. And he goes, and I love you. I want you to have, and I was just so honored, yes, to be part of this club, but even maybe a little more honored because he did this, because he thought that much. So that's when I know that, I had paid it forward correctly. Because,
that's
and
fantastic.
I was, so again, I love it that I'm here. This is so great. And quite the honor, but it was just amazing where it came from. And I was just like, wow. I was just like, Paul Zucker is continuing on. His legacy
Man.
lives so much because that's true. Paul Zucker legacy style. Yes.
Well, that is fantastic to hear.
Thank
Suzy,
you.
thank you so much. Please keep in
You're
touch.
welcome. Okay. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Absolutely. Take care.